And with that, it's hard to introduce Therese. How can you introduce Therese Finn? But in normal times, we would all be sitting around in the salon in front of the fireplace watching the movies together. And Therese would be giving us a wonderful introduction to the movies, and then we'd actually watch it together. So I kind of browbeat Therese into doing this virtually. We realized we couldn't stream the movies and things like that. So I thought she could just actually give us her thoughts on various holiday movies. So she's going to run through some familiar ones really quickly and then really zoom in on a couple of special ones. So with that, like I said, I recommend that everybody mute themselves. They go to speaker view. And Therese, take it away, please.
Okay. So mine's on speaker view, but I see you, Boyd. Does that matter? That doesn't matter, does it? Oops. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. And welcome to Classic Movie Holiday Magic Extravaganza. It's been a really hard, weirdo year. And yeah. And so Boyd and I thought, well, what the heck? One last stab at classic movie series for 2020, even though we can't actually watch any of the movies together. So let's just give it a whirl and instill a little Christmas spirit into this month. So normally, yeah, I'd get up and give a little speech, and then I could gratefully get down into my seat and watch the movie with you all and let the movie do all the work. But that's not going to happen tonight. So instead, I'm just going to take you through a little jaunt through my favorite holiday movies, ones that I grew up with. And they meant a lot to me growing up, and then they became part of my Christmas tradition with my daughter and my husband. So they're part of Christmas now. So on a scholarly turn, because this is a learning session, right? Holiday movies have three criteria. One, they must be set during the Christmas season or the festive time of year known as the holiday season, which normally in our culture starts at Thanksgiving and ends New Year's Day. Two, they must touch upon uplifting themes such as redemption, charity, fellowship with our other humans, or evoke that special holiday Christmas spirit of love and joy that brings back childhood memories. Now, for all of us, maybe they weren't pleasant childhood memories. For me, they were memories of watching Christmas movies in a back bedroom. So these definitely do that. And then three, watching these said holiday movies enhances our holiday and Christmas experience, and in fact becomes part of our family traditions, which are often defined socially and culturally by what was popular when we were kids. So those, you'll see that in mine. Definitely it was ones post World War II that I grew up watching. My daughter's husband, his family always watches Pee-wee's Christmas. So we all have our own holiday traditions that we do, and with movies. Okay, so since the proliferation of television, holiday movies really have become a part of a lot of people's Christmas traditions, as much as decorating a tree, singing carols, baking cookies, hanging lights, hanging mistletoe, kissing under mistletoe, buying wreaths from the high school, etc. Most of us hunker down at some point with family members, or this year maybe without, and watch our favorite holiday movies. So my eyesight is going, so you'll have to excuse me as I peer at my notes. Okay, so, okay, many holiday historians, and there are holiday historians, trace our present day Christmas traditions. They trace it back to the publication of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol in 1843. It was then that a lot of European traditions got coalesced in the English world, in the England's world of caroling and trees with candles on them, and etc. And doing good for your fellow citizens. So when Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol, Christmas was really going through a slump worldwide. It just really wasn't that big of a holiday anymore. But he could see that the people of his country needed some cheering up. And we still do need cheering up in the dark of the night. From, for time immemorial, winter solstice, etc. This has been a time when people light candles and fires against the dark and hunker down together and tell stories. So our storytelling now is via movies, mostly, as we all know, watching Netflix, etc., ad nauseum during this pandemic. Okay, I stray. But little did Dickens know at that time that his story would hop the pond so profoundly that it really would shape how we celebrate Christmas now. I call it our merry old English version of the holiday. It's so much so ingrained in our culture that years ago we were in Honolulu visiting my sister at Christmas with our daughter Judy, and we were at a market. It was like 80 something degrees weather, and on the market window was painted snowfall, old people in England muffled up and singing carols by gaslight lamp. I just laughed and laughed because here we are in the tropics, modern day tropics, and this is still commercially Christmas for us as a culture. So when movie making became the popular form of storytelling, it really is no surprise that the Christmas story and holiday themes would be very, very popular and big sellers. The first Christmas movie ever made was entitled Santa Claus. It was released in 1898, and it was made as a short in England. Of the first 10 Christmas movies ever made, 3 of them were versions of A Christmas Carol. Now, you all know A Christmas Carol, Scrooge, the old miser, right? The ghost of Jacob Marley, his partner, comes and visits him. 3 other ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come visit him. He's a big old meanie poo-poo head, and after this miraculous night, he comes out a changed man. So I'm sure Dickens would love my summation in that way. So there have been 135 film versions of A Christmas Carol. But in my estimation, and in many film critics, the very best version, and the one that I grew up with as a kid, is the 1951 black and white English, made in England version, starring Alastair Sim. And it was released in England under the title Scrooge, and then later that year was released in the United States as A Christmas Carol. It was produced and directed by Brian Desmond Hurst, a very popular writer and director at the time in England. And it stars Alastair Sim as Scrooge and a fantastic supporting cast of really brilliant and very popular post-World War II British actors of the time. And so if you were watching it in England at that time, all your favorite actors would be in it doing all sorts of really fun roles. But really, Alastair Sims makes the movie. He's wonderful. He's magical even in his portrayal and transformation of Ebenezer Scrooge. He just is great. It was a very popular movie in Great Britain, as I said, but not so much in the United States, not so much in America, where it was deemed too dark. And Variety magazine said it will give the tender age kiddies viewing it the screaming memes, which is exactly why I loved it as a kid. It was scary. It was shot in black and white. It was very shadowy and mystery oriented. Like I was a big Sherlock Holmes addict as a kid. And it was just exciting to see. It felt like as a kid that it was really of the time of when it was written. It was broadcast regularly on television all during the 1960s. And so I watched it year after year with my family. At the end, Alastair Sims, his transformation into a better Scrooge just cannot be topped on film. He will have you wanting to get up and hop around and dance and laugh and sing with him. So I really highly recommend this movie. He's the only Scottish actor to play Scrooge, other than Scrooge McDuck in the Disney cartoons. And one of Scrooge's most famous lines is "Bah humbug," and I didn't realize this until I did research that humbug actually was a popular slang term at the time, and if you were a humbug, you were a phony. That meant you were just doing stuff to make money or to get someone's approval. So when he said "Bah humbug" to the people who were trying to foist Christmas on him, he was accusing them of being phonies. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. He did not have Christmas in his heart. Okay, let's see. Oh, at this point, I just have to put in a word for my second favorite version of A Christmas Carol, which is Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol. It's about 55 minutes long. It's an animated musical. Could it get any better? With wonderful music by Julie Stein. And I just highly recommend it. It's so fun. And I hear through reliable sources that the Muppet Christmas Carol is okay too. So, okay, Christmas Carol. Done. Okay, we're moving on now to my all-time favorite holiday movie, It's a Wonderful Life. It was released in 1946 through Liberty Films, which was Frank Capra's newly formed movie company, and through RKO Studios. This movie is Frank Capra's take on A Christmas Carol, with its theme of redemption through love of your fellow humans and of yourself. But this time he turns it on its ear, excuse me, telling the story through the viewpoint of the Bob Cratchit character, which is Scrooge's much maligned clerk, who he is totally horrible to and way underpays and everything. So in It's a Wonderful Life, that character becomes our main hero, George Bailey. And Mr. Potter, his nemesis, is the villain of the piece. So instead of ghosts interviewing and intervening in Scrooge's life, an angel named Clarence comes down to help George Bailey, our main character, and also to help himself get his own angel wings. So we don't have ghosts, we have an angel coming down. I have to take my glasses off for a minute. Oh, okay, yeah. So instead of showing George his past, present, and future, like in the real Christmas Carol, George gets his wish and he gets to see what life would have been like if he had never been born. And it's a very tantalizing topic for us humans, just like in the real Christmas Carol, being able to look back on your own past and see it again and be able to look into the future and see what happens is like, whoa. But to see the world as if you had never been born just always fascinated me about this movie, because all of us at one time or another have felt like, oh, I wish I had never been born. And it's hard to say right now in these times when we're all desperately clinging to health and to loved ones. But there are times of despair when we feel like giving up. So this movie is also just an extremely moving reminder of how much we mean to each other and how one person's life, although we think it's meaningless or just a small life, I have a very small life, but it's amazing how many people we really do touch in our lives and what a hole there would be if we'd never been born. So I'm getting a little emotional. I just love this movie so much. Okay. All right. Let me see. Oh, well, I was going to say part of the plot, but I won't. Okay. It's based on the story, The Greatest Gift by Philip Van Doren. And it has a moving and hilarious and iconic script by the husband and wife writing duo of Albert Hackett and Frances Goodrich, with Frank Capra, of course, putting in his oar because he loved to do that. It stars Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed, Lyle Barrymore, and a huge cast of every character actor you've ever adored. Music by the great Dmitri Tiomkin, and this was the last movie he collaborated with Frank Capra with. It was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Don't believe it won for that. It did not win for that. But the American Film Institute voted it the most inspirational movie of all time. Despite this, it was a huge box office flop at the time. Post-World War II, America was a little cynical. Frank Capra had been in his power all during the 30s. He did You Can't Take It With You, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Meet John Doe, et cetera, et cetera. Really feel-good movies. But he eventually became known as Frank Capricorn because the audiences started feeling like he was maybe just a little bit too corny, a little bit too emotional for them at the time. And this movie particularly struck a nerve because so many families had experienced loss of their families during World War II, or they had family members coming home with really serious problems. And so George Bailey, played by Jimmy Stewart, his contemplation of suicide kind of came across as self-indulgent at the time. It was re-released, maybe 5 years later, and it did slightly better then. It really hit its own when I was a kid, when they started showing reruns on television, because then people like me, my dad was in the war, was in a German prisoner of war camp, came back quite damaged. It really struck a note. It was like, to us, a Valentine to a world we would never know, to the last era of our parents' youth, as it were. So it meant a lot to me and a lot of my friends when we were growing up. Jimmy Stewart himself was suffering emotional repercussions from being in the war. He had served as a fighter pilot and demanded to be put into service. So he flew a lot of dangerous missions. He saw a lot of death, including deaths of really close friends of his that were flying with him. So he came home with PTSD, and he was really nervous about making a movie again. But he had worked with Frank Capra a few times before, and he trusted him, and Frank talked him into doing this movie. And later in life, when they were interviewed, they both agreed that this was the favorite movie of all their careers. This was both of them their favorite movie. So it really rebooted Jimmy's career. He had won an Academy Award in 1939 for Best Supporting Actor for A Philadelphia Story. And then he went off to war, and he came back, and this movie really rebooted his career, and he went on to make Harvey, and then a string of Hitchcock films, and really had a whole different career. It also launched Donna Reed into her career from a B actor into B movies into mainstream. And she was young and nervous and adorable. Okay. This would be Jimmy Stewart's first on-screen kiss since he got back from the war. And Donna Reed had not done that much kissing on screen either. So they were both super duper nervous, but they did it all in one unrehearsed take. Frank Capra just rolled the cameras. They did the scene. It was, if you've seen the movie numerous times or even just once, you can remember he starts kissing her when she's on the phone with this other guy who likes her, and the music's playing, Buffalo Gals, won't you come out tonight? Anyway, they start kissing passionately. Well, apparently they got so passionate that they had to cut a lot out of the scene, did not make it into the movie because Jimmy really was feeling it. So I find that very exciting. Okay, a fun fact. Prior to this, films, when they were trying to get a falling snow effect, used cornflakes that were painted white. Looked great, floated down beautifully, nice visual, extremely noisy when they were falling, or when if there was any action on the set afterwards, they were crunching their way through the scene. So they used to shoot the falling snow, shoot the scene, and then redub in voices. But this movie, they changed all that. RKO's special effects department won a Technical Academy Award that year for developing a new formula for falling snow using soap, water, and foamite, a firefighting chemical, which they pumped at high pressure through wind machines and made silently falling snow. They used over 6,000 gallons of this stuff to make the movie. It just sounds so toxic. I did not do any further research about any toxic fallout from anybody being in this movie. But, it's all the magic of movie making. Okay. I'm now moving on to a sweet gem of a movie that was released the following year in 1947. And it too was nominated for Best Picture. So 2 years running, a Christmas movie is nominated for Best Picture. And this one is Miracle on 34th Street, which also aired on television every year when I was a kid. And then because I was lucky enough to grow up in the Los Angeles area, you could watch it on like $1 Million Movie 5 nights a week when they were playing it. And so I grew to love this movie very, very much. It was written and directed by the Hollywood director George Seaton, based on a story by Valentine Davies. And it tells the tale of a nice old man who claims to be Santa Claus, Kris Kringle, but who is institutionalized for being insane. And a young lawyer decides to defend him in court as the real Santa Claus. So besides being a hilarious romantic comedy, it also tackles the issues of commercialism in Christmas and in our culture in general, and what defines insanity. And it also pokes fun at the relatively new psychiatric profession. It stars Maureen O'Hara, that Irish firebrand, who I was raised by Irish Sisters of Charity, straight off the boat from Ireland. And the big school rumor was that the meanest, ugliest nun at our school, that her sister was Maureen O'Hara. So we clung to that. It probably was not true, but you never know. Anyway, Maureen O'Hara, John Payne, who was a very popular leading man in the 1930s and a fantastic singer, but we don't get to hear him sing in this. He's really not used to his full advantage in this movie. A very young and absolutely adorable and precocious Natalie Wood, and then the great British actor Edmund Gwenn, who plays Santa Claus. And Porter Hall, this stock supporting actor who plays the neurotic department store psychiatrist, is just hilarious. He's really over the top hilarious. So all across the board, this movie has an excellent supporting cast, especially William Frawley. He was Bub in My Three Sons, remember that? And also Fred Mertz in I Love Lucy. And so William Frawley and Gene Lockhart play these crooked politicians. Gene's a judge and the other guy is this crooked politician, and they are really, really funny. Much of the action takes place in Macy's department store, and they portray the actual characters of Macy, Mr. Macy and Mr. Gimble, who own the department stores. And they had to get permission from them to make the movie. And they both men loved the movie. We're really happy to throw their names behind it. Plus, it was great advertising for them. But some of the best scenes really, really are the courtroom scenes when Santa's on trial. And so ironically, the United States Postal Service it comes in and saves the day for Santa Claus. The United States Postal Service until 1971 was a cabinet level department in the executive branch of the federal government. So they had a lot more weight, I guess, in those days. Anyway, they could prove in court that he was really Santa. It was nominated for Best Picture, and it won 3 Academy Awards for Best Story and Best Screenplay. And Edmund Gwenn won Best Supporting Actor for playing Kris Kringle, for the role for which he put on 30 pounds. And that year, he really did open the Macy's Day Parade. And so Maureen O'Hara in her memoirs talks about it. They filmed freezing weather. He opened the parade. They were all down there being part of the parade, fitting in scenes in between. And it was really cold, and they could only do it in one take because once the parade was gone, that was it. Okay, so when he went to accept his Academy Award for playing Santa Claus, Edmund Gwenn said, "Now I know there is a Santa Claus." And you know what? Natalie Wood, the whole time they were making the movie, totally believed he was Santa Claus. And I do too. I do. And I'm going to share a little quote from the movie, mainly because we were talking about the marquee at the movie theater. This is on the marquee at our movie theater right now. And Daniel and I had just watched this movie a couple of days ago, and then he went downtown and he texted me and said, "Look at what's on the marquee." And it says, I believe, it's silly, but I believe." I do believe. Okay. The last 2 of my childhood favorites are musicals. The first one's Paramount Pictures' 1954 Big movie hit was Irving Berlin's White Christmas, from the best-selling song White Christmas. The song White Christmas, up until the Beatles started selling records, was the #1 selling record around the world for decades. Interesting, huh? Anyway, this movie is directed by Michael Curtiz, who also directed Casablanca and a whole bunch of other movies, and stars Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney, Vera Ellen, and Dean Jagger. Now, it's thin on plot, but it's full of song and dance with all these great Irving Berlin tunes and all these great show numbers. So here's the plot, kind of in a nutshell. A song and dance team, Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye, find romance with a sister act, Rosemary Clooney and Vera Ellen, and team up at Christmas to save the failing Vermont Inn owned by their former commanding officer in World War II, Dean Jagger. So that's it in a nutshell. A lot happens along the way, but it's just a real feel-good movie. It struck a chord with me because I mentioned before, my dad did serve in World War II, and he would never talk about it. So this movie gave me and my sisters this candy floss, candy cane version of World War II that we could handle. It starts with a Hollywood battle scene and Bing Crosby saves Danny Kaye's life, and maybe it's vice versa. No, anyway, so it meant a lot to me on that level too, because not only was I raised in a musical family where showbiz just seemed like the most fun thing to ever do, but also it had this strong patriotic backdrop to it. I know people who know me today would be like, you what? You patriotic? But in my own way, I am. Okay, let's see. Oh, so there's a famous scene in the movie where the two men dress up like the two women and do a kooky act, do the women's act, but they have these fans and they're doing it themselves. Well, that wasn't originally part of the script. Danny Kaye talked Bing Crosby into doing it one day, at their lunch break. They put on the costumes and were goofing around singing the songs. And Michael Curtiz saw it and liked it and had it written into the plot. And they only did 2 takes of it. And in one, Bing Crosby keeps laughing, and that's the one they used because it's just so real. And so that was not originally part of it, but it actually is one of the scenes that many people, it's the only scene they remember from the movie. So Sisters is the name of it. Rosemary Clooney used to say that the film would be better if they had dubbed in her dancing. And Vera Ellen, who played her sister, was a trained dancer, and they had to dub in her singing. And Danny Kaye was a little out of his depth with dancing too. They originally had cast Donald O'Connor in the role, and he was a trained dancer, but he was at the height of making his Francis the Mule movies. Adrian, talk about animal movies. And Donald O'Connor got a weird flu from the mule and could not make White Christmas. He had to cancel out. So then they hired Danny Kaye. And Danny Kaye held up production because he was forever doing hijinks. Apparently, he was just Mr. Goofball. My daughter and I watch this movie every Christmas. We love it. And she pointed out to me that Vera Ellen, whose character's name is Judy, and that's my daughter's name, always has these high-necked costumes on. And we kind of looked into it, and there were rumors that she had kind of damaged her body because she was so anorexic, but those are just rumors. However, when you watch the movie again or whatever, no, all of her costumes are like turtlenecks, no matter across the board, you cannot see her neck. It's the first film shot in VistaVision, which made the screen not only wide, but tall. So it's kind of weird sometimes when you're showing movies now in VistaVision because people look like they're little squished things. And the falling snow at the end, the very last scene, they open up those indoors and there's the snow falling. And this time the snow has asbestos in it. So Hollywood was really making progress. Okay, so like I said, that was a Christmas Eve musical ritual for me and my Judy. So that brings us to, whew, everybody doing okay? So speaking of Judy, my 5th all-time Christmas favorite is MGM's 1944 hit, Meet Me in St. Louis. Now, it's not technically a Christmas movie. It's really a movie that takes place over a whole year of holidays, but the most memorable scenes are the Christmas scenes, including Judy Garland, beautifully framed, singing Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And I defy anyone to watch that and not get tears in their eyes. She just is so gorgeous and so wonderful in this movie. And she had a lot of problems, but it doesn't show in this movie. Okay, where am I? It was directed by Vincent Minnelli. This is the movie where he and Judy met and fell in love, and they eventually had Eliza. Vincent was a stickler for detail. Every costume, every set, everything had to be true to what it would have been like turn of the century. Because the whole premise is we're following the life of this turn of the century family who live in St. Louis right at the time of the World's Fair was being built there. And they love St. Louis, but dad wants to move them all to New York. And and the daughters are falling in love, and the little girls are going through trauma about leaving their friends and holidays coming. And it's a very small themed movie, but it was so popular, and it's interspersed with a whole bunch of great music. What did I do with that? Yes, let's see. Yeah, okay. So I got off on a track. It stars Judy Garland, Margaret O'Brien as her little sister, and she won a Special Academy Award for Child Actor that year. Mary Astor, who had just come off, she plays the mom, and she had just come off doing Maltese Falcon with Humphrey Bogart, where she was a gun moll. So interesting leap. Leon Ames and Marjorie Main, good old Ma Kettle, plays the family maid who holds, the housekeeper who holds it all together. It was a box office smash. And other than Gone with the Wind, it was MGM's biggest money maker up until that point. It made a lot of money for MGM. Like I said, it was a very small story, but the important thing is throughout the whole movie is that it's about family. And there's just so many moving parts with a lot of good old-fashioned songs in it. So I said Vincent and Judy met and fell in love during the making of the movie, and she said she married him because he made her feel beautiful at last. She had been under contract with MGM for a while, and Louis B. Mayer was not nice to her, and he was always telling her how ugly and untalented she was as she was raking in tons of money for the studio. So I think Vincent Minnelli came along and she was just like, oh, somebody sees me, which is what we all need, right? A lot of the music is composed by George Stoll. Of course, there's old songs in it too, like Meet Me in St. Louis was actually an old song that came out when the World's Fair first came out. It's based on a series of novelized stories, a memoir actually by writer Sally Benson about her own childhood. And for many people, this movie is the essential one to watch on Christmas Eve. In fact, if you start watching this movie, so it's Christmas Eve night. If I started watching the movie at 10:22 in the evening and watched it through when it's midnight in the movie, when the church bell that tolls midnight, where this character John proposes to Judy Garland's character, it will be midnight in real time with me watching the movie, and I can actually ring in Christmas evening with the cast from Meet Me in St. Louis. I've actually never done it, and I don't intend to do it this year, but apparently people do. I love it, but anyway. So those are the 5 movies that really shaped my childhood Christmas experiences. And I love them all dearly. I own most of them, and I watch them every year. Now, though, I have unearthed over the past few years, since I've really started doing a lot more work with old movies, 2 gems that our library has. And the first one is called, I need to find my notes. Okay, is called I'll Be Seeing You. Here it is. I'm returning it tomorrow. It was released in January 1944. I don't know why they released Christmas movies in January, but it happens. David Selznick of Gone with the Wind fame was the producer, and it was directed by William Dieterle. Filmed in black and white, which was a choice then at that point because most movies were going color. It stars Joseph Cotten, who had just been in a big hit in Alfred Hitchcock's movie A Shadow of a Doubt. Joseph Cotten was also a contemporary of Orson Welles, was in the Mercury Theater group with him, was in Citizen Kane, The Magnificent Ambersons, The Third Man, a lot of Orson Welles movies. So he had like serious drama creds. And then his co-star was Ginger Rogers, one of my very favorites. And in 1940, she had won the Best Actress Award for Kitty Foyle, which was her first serious role. So that was her leap from being Fred Astaire's ever fabulous singing and dancing partner and her roles as singing and dancing comedian into more serious roles. And this role in this movie is definitely a serious role. Okay, let's see. So they play two people who meet on a train and have an immediate sense of connection. But neither one of them knows that the other one is hiding a big secret. They each have a big secret to hide. He's a traumatized war vet on leave from a hospital, and she's a convict temporarily released to relatives for the holidays. Merry Christmas! What a great premise for a happy holiday movie. Her Ginger Rogers' aunt is played by Spring Byington, who I think I read somewhere actually has played the most mothers of any other actress in Hollywood. Her uncle is played by this wonderful character actor, Tom Tully, and her cousin is played deliciously and delightfully by an all grown-up Shirley Temple, and she does a great job with it. It is an unusual setup for a holiday movie, but it does take place in the time frame. It starts on Christmas Eve and ends on New Year's Day. Besides being a tender romance, this movie I think is really important because it explores a topic of PTSD, once again at a time when a lot of men and women were coming back damaged from the war, and not too much was being done about it, and not too much studying was being done about it either. So it was kind of brave for them to put out this movie. And there's some really moving scenes where he has episodes. Yeah. Then her character, she is put in jail because she accidentally kills her boss who's sexually assaulting her. So that was unheard of in this time too, that something like that would even be brought up. And it also focuses a lot on when she goes home to the family of the stigma that is placed on people who have served time in jail or in prison, and how hard it is to re-enter real life again. It sounds like a bummer, but it's really, really uplifting, and you will laugh and you will cry. And it was a big box office hit, strangely enough. And the title song, I'll Be Seeing You, was a big, very popular song written by, by Sammy Fain. It was very popular with soldiers, sailors, GIs overseas. The whole thing is I'll be seeing you, and all these familiar things. And it's very poignant. I'm not going to tell you the ending because why would I? But I highly recommend this this movie, which really brings Christmas home in a totally different way. And my final movie, I'm almost through, I'm going to talk about very briefly, is a movie called Remember the Night. Also a song title, but has nothing to do with this movie. So, and no, I'm not going to sing it. Okay, so Remember the Night was also released in January, but this time in 1940. So we're going back a little bit. By Paramount Pictures, directed by Mitchell Leeson, who was a prolific director of rom-coms at the time through the 30s and 40s. He worked with a lot of different actors in a lot of big hits. With an original story and screenplay by Preston Sturges, who at the time was about to become the writer-director darling of Hollywood. He had written a lot of screenplays, but had never directed them. And this was the last movie that he wrote the screenplay for, where he did not direct. Later this year, in 1940, Preston Sturges wrote and directed a great movie called The Great McGinty. And he then went on to do a string of movies. The following year, he made Lady Eve with Barbara Stanwyck and Ball of Fire with Barbara Stanwyck. So he worked first with Barbara Stanwyck on this film, and they developed quite a rapport. Okay, so Preston Sturges. So he adds a lot of humor, slapstick and otherwise, to any movie he writes. It stars two of my all-time favorite stars, Barbara Stanwyck and Fred MacMurray. Barbara Stanwyck, a few years earlier, had been nominated for a Best Actress for a serious movie, Stella Dallas. And that kind of put her in a different, moving from B pictures into A pictures. So by the time she was making this movie, she was definitely a star. Fred MacMurray, I just love Fred MacMurray. That's all I'm going to say. I just love him. And he is so good in this movie. You just want to love him. This is the first of 4 screen pairings for Stanwyck and MacMurray. 4 years later, they'd make Double Indemnity together for Billy Wilder. So this is a totally different kind of movie than Double Indemnity. It has a great supporting cast once again, including Sterling Holloway, who voiced a lot of cartoon characters, including Winnie the Pooh for Disney animated movies. He has kind of a high little voice, and he sings. And he does a song in this movie called A Perfect Day that will just melt you. It'll just melt you. It comes from out of nowhere, and it'll melt your heart. Beulah Bondi plays Fred MacMurray's mom. She played the mom in It's a Wonderful Life. She's one of those character actors that she made 66 movies as a supporting actress and got 2 Academy Award nominations. She should really have won some special Academy Award, but I don't think she did. She's really good in this movie. And playing her sister is this spacey older actress, Elizabeth Patterson, who maybe those of you none of you are my age. Anyway, she played the old lady neighbor in I Love Lucy across the hall who babysat little Ricky, Mrs. Trumbull. So she's a great character actress, and they're both just adorable in this movie. Okay, so what do I have here? Oh, okay, so here's the plot in a nutshell. Moved to pity because it's the Christmas season, a New York DA, Fred MacMurray, lets pretty shoplifter Barbara Stanwyck out on bail. Another woman in jail. Hello. Offers her a ride home to Indiana because it turns out they're both from Indiana. And along the way, and along the Preston Sturges way, they have many foils and adventures, including a run-in with the sheriff. And they meet each other's folks, and they eventually fall in love. Once again, I will not tell you the end of the movie. It's possibly not what you would think. Not that you could think anything from this description, but they have such a great screen chemistry. Just, it's so fun to see it earlier and then to see it later on in Double Indemnity. But once again, okay, it's hilarious, heartwarming, and it's a great script for 2 of Hollywood's biggest stars at the top of their holiday game. So I highly recommend Remember the Night. I like to end with a quote, as you know. I have 2, actually. One is, well, they're both from It's a Wonderful Life. This line just always gets Daniel and I. It's at the end of the movie, and Clarence the Angel's gone back to heaven, and he's left a book for George Bailey, and George opens it up, and the inscription says, see, George, had wanted to die and everything. And it says, remember, George, no man is a failure who has friends. And I have to say right now that I just don't think any of us can get through this without the love of our family and friends. And I really, truly appreciate mine. And I know you appreciate yours too. And that's what Christmas really is all about, is knowing the love in your life, and whether you can be with them or not, acknowledging it and taking strength from that, and even joy, a little laughter. So on a little friendlier note, Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. So thank you, angels, for joining me on my little journey through Christmas movies.